Think about the last really intense conversation you had at work.
Oh, yeah, like a performance review or maybe a massive disagreement over a project timeline.
Exactly. Now, I want you to ask yourself a deeply uncomfortable question. Were you actually listening to the other person? Or were you just, quietly reloading your own ammunition while their mouth was moving?
Oof, yeah, that is uncomfortable. Because let's be honest, most of us are definitely doing the latter.
Right. And that's why we're doing this deep dive today. We've got this fascinating stack of facilitator guides, workbooks, and behavioral assessments from a corporate training program called Learning to Listen.
Which is such a simple title, but the content is anything but simple.
Yeah, our mission today is to basically take this framework apart. We want to see how it transforms listening from this like passive accident into a highly intentional active skill.
Right, because the premise we are starting with is that we fundamentally misunderstand what listening actually requires of us,
Hmm,
both physically and mentally.
we really do. We treat it as a totally passive state, don't we?
Oh, 100%. We assume that, well, because our vocal cords are resting and sound waves are hitting our eardrums, we're successfully doing the work.
Like my mouth is shut, so I must be listening.
Exactly.
Well,
But the reality presented in these materials is that true listening is actually a state of intense cognitive and physical exertion.
yeah, that invisible work is just immense. I mean, think about the sheer physical energy it takes to suppress your own biases or to corral your wandering attention.
And to actively process someone else's worldview on top of that, it's exhausting.
It really is. And it matters so much, whether you are coaching a frustrated employee or helping a customer navigate some complex product choice or trying to de-escalate a tense dispute.
Right. Your ability to perform that invisible work is the ultimate make or break mechanism for the outcome of that conversation.
Which brings us to the core framework of the program, right? The 3 dimensions of listening.
Yeah, so instead of treating listening as this giant monolith, the program breaks it down into 3 distinct measurable activities.
And those are staying focused, capturing the message, and helping the speaker.
Exactly. So let's pull those apart, starting with the first dimension, which is staying focused.
Because we mentioned the invisible work of listening, and focus is really where that battle is usually lost first.
It really is. And the mechanism behind why our brains want to wander is actually super interesting.
Hmm.
It's basically a matter of processing speed.
Wait, like a computer?
Yeah, essentially. Our brains can process thoughts significantly faster than a human being can actually speak.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So while someone is talking to you at a normal conversational pace, your brain has massive amounts of excess processing capacity just sitting there, getting totally bored.
So it just starts doing other things, like working on your grocery list.
Right, or analyzing the speaker's outfit, or, drafting your brilliant rebuttal.
That makes so much sense. So that excess processing capacity is really the enemy of focus.
Exactly. So the first dimension requires the listener to actively harness that surplus mental energy and redirect it right back onto the speaker.
So it's the conscious suppression of internal noise. You are literally fighting the biological urge to let your mind drift.
You are, and that perfectly sets up the second dimension, which is capturing the message.
Right, because if focus is like keeping your eyes on the road, then capturing the message is actually reading the road signs.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
But it's not just taking dictation.
Hmm.
Bad capturing is filtering everything the person says through your own preconceived notions.
Right, you hear what you expect to hear, not what they actually said.
Exactly. Good capturing involves taking in the specific data, the emotional undertones, and the nuanced subtext, but without immediately distorting it to fit your own narrative.
You're gathering the raw material without contaminating the crime scene, basically.
Yes, you have to capture their message exactly as they intended it, which requires just a tremendous amount of self-awareness.
I mean, you have to constantly ask yourself, am I hearing their truth or just a reflection of my own assumptions? I want to introduce an analogy here because taking these dimensions together starts to paint a really different picture of what a listener actually is.
Oh, I love good analogy. Lay it on me.
Okay, so hearing is like having a television playing in the background while you cook dinner. The noise is there, you might catch a word or two, but it's entirely passive.
Right, you're not really engaged.
But listening in these dimensions is more like being a live air traffic controller.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so you have to actively manage your attention on the radar screen. That's dimension 1, staying focused.
Right, keeping your eyes peeled.
And then you have to capture exact, specific data regarding altitude and speed from the blips on the screen. That's dimension 2, capturing the message.
Okay, I follow you.
But here is where the analogy gets a little complicated for me. I want to pause on the third dimension. We understand focusing and capturing, but how exactly does a listener actively help the speaker?
Yeah, that's the big one. Helping the speaker is usually the biggest paradigm shift for individuals moving through this training.
Really? Why is that?
Well, because our default instinct when someone brings us a problem is to help them by solving it.
Oh, guilty. I do that all the time.
Right. We jump in, we finish their sentence, we offer all this unprompted advice, we try to fix the situation so everyone can just move on.
Because we think we're being incredibly efficient and helpful.
Exactly. But in the context of this framework, jumping to the fix is actually a massive barrier to communication.
Wait, really? How so?
Because helping the speaker actually means creating an environment where they can express their thoughts clearly and fully. Often, they discover their own solutions in that process.
Okay, so it requires that invisible work again, like managing your own defensive reactions so the speaker feels safe to continue.
Yes, and it also requires highly visible work. You're deploying nonverbal cues like maintaining open body language and nodding.
Right, and using verbal encouragers, asking clarifying questions like, tell me more about what happened next, or am I understanding you correctly when you say this project feels derailed?
Exactly. You're essentially acting as a conduit.
Going back to the air traffic controller, you're guiding the pilot down to the runway. You aren't flying the plane for them, but you're clearing the airspace and providing the exact conditions they need to land safely.
That is a perfect extension of the analogy. And when you master that third dimension, a fascinating dynamic occurs.
What happens?
The speaker actually begins to articulate their own thoughts with greater clarity. By being a highly active listener, you are elevating their ability to communicate in real time.
Wow, so you're drawing the best version of their message out of them.
Precisely.
But, I mean, knowing that you need to act as an air traffic controller and actually doing it are two very different things.
Oh, completely.
The challenge with a purely internal, invisible skill is that you can't film yourself doing it to see where your form breaks down. If you want to improve a golf swing, you record it. If you want to improve your listening, you need an artificial mirror.
And that is exactly what the program's self-assessment provides.
Yeah.
You need a baseline of data to move forward.
Okay, so how does this assessment actually work?
Well, the Learning to Listen assessment uses one-on-one conversations as its specific frame of reference, which really grounds the data in everyday reality.
Right, not just abstract concepts.
Exactly. It's structured around 30 behavioral statements where individuals rate themselves on a 5-point scale, ranging from almost always to almost never.
To give an idea of what we're talking about, these would be statements probing those three dimensions, right?
Yes. Things like rating how often you maintain eye contact, or how often you catch yourself formulating a response before the other person has finished speaking.
Or how frequently you summarize what the speaker said to ensure you captured it correctly.
Exactly. And the sources make a very specific recommendation regarding the time frame for this assessment.
Okay, what is it?
The inventory itself takes only about 10 minutes to physically complete, but they emphatically state that you must allow about an hour to interpret the results.
Wait, what? I have to throw a massive flag on the play here.
I thought you might.
I mean, I am highly skeptical of the human element in a 10-minute self-assessment for a soft skill. People are notoriously terrible at evaluating their own emotional intelligence.
You're not wrong about that.
If I'm taking this test, my ego is going to ensure I rate myself much closer to almost always on the positive behaviors than I actually deserve. Nobody sits down at their desk and eagerly admits they're a terrible, selfish listener. It feels like the data going in is inherently flawed.
Your skepticism is entirely justified, and it actually highlights exactly why that 1-hour interpretation period is absolutely mandated.
Okay, explain that to me.
Well, self-assessments in soft skills run headlong into the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Right, where people overrate their abilities.
Exactly. The people who are the absolute worst at a skill consistently overrate themselves the highest because they lack the competence to recognize their own incompetence.
So how does a 10-minute piece of paper break through that delusion?
The assessment is designed to create cognitive dissonance. The 30 statements force you to look at highly specific micro-behaviors rather than your general feeling of being a good person.
Ah, I see.
So when you tally those specific behaviors and stare at a subscore that proves your ability to help the speaker is exceptionally low, that hour is spent reconciling the math with your self-image.
Wow. So that 60 minutes is not for reading a graph, it's for breaking down ego.
Precisely. It is for realizing that your lifelong habit of interrupting people, which, you always internally justified as high energy problem solving, is actually a severe documented barrier to your team's success.
That is a brutal hour. You're essentially dismantling your own communication style piece by piece.
It's incredibly uncomfortable,
Right.
but that discomfort is the necessary catalyst for growth.
Right, because you are moving the participant from a state of unconscious incompetence where they don't even know they're terrible at listening into conscious incompetence.
Exactly. They now have the data proving exactly where they fail, which is the only place from which you can build new skills.
And building those new skills is the entire point of the implementation phase, isn't it? Gathering the data and breaking down the ego is just preparing the soil.
Absolutely. The primary goal of the workshop following the assessment is to create a concrete, personalized action plan to put these mechanics into immediate daily practice.
Because insight without application is entirely useless.
Exactly. Now, the sources detail how this curriculum can be run as a standalone, deep dive workshop focused entirely on the mechanics of hearing versus listening.
But it's also highly modular, right? Designed to be incorporated into broader existing training programs.
Yeah, the use cases they provide are extensive. They could just plugging this module into training for communication, performance coaching, customer service, needs assessment, supervising, and giving or receiving feedback.
And those are all highly logical applications. I mean, if you're a manager delivering a critical performance review, your ability to capture the subtle nonverbal cues of how your employee is receiving that feedback dictates the entire future of that working relationship.
100%. And customer service is another really direct application.
Oh, for sure.
When a customer calls with a complaint, their actual problem is rarely the first thing out of their mouth.
Usually the first thing is just raw frustration.
Exactly. But an employee trained in these three dimensions knows how to absorb that frustration without getting defensive, capture the underlying data, and guide the customer to articulating the actual root cause of the issue.
But, looking deeper at this list of applications, there is a really fascinating inclusion. They specifically list negotiating and selling.
Yeah, that surprises a lot of people.
It's just so counterintuitive. We culturally view sales and negotiation as these aggressive, talking-heavy, highly persuasive skills.
Right. The archetype is the slick salesperson pitching a product or the hardened negotiator banging their fist on the table making demands.
Exactly. So why on earth is mastering the invisible internal mechanics of listening positioned as the secret weapon in a negotiation?
Because our cultural archetype of negotiation is fundamentally flawed. Here's the truth. Amateurs negotiate by talking. Professionals negotiate by listening.
Wow, that completely upends the traditional power dynamic. Amateurs talk, professionals listen. Break down the mechanics of why that actually works.
Well, it comes back to the second and third dimensions. In any negotiation, information is leverage.
Right.
The party with the most accurate map of the other side's desires, constraints, and fears holds all the power.
Makes sense.
So, if you're approaching a negotiation by simply waiting for your turn to speak, you are completely blind to the subtle hesitations and the underlying needs the other party is inevitably leaking. You're failing to capture the message.
So you're fighting over the price of the car, entirely missing the fact that the salesperson's body language shows they are desperate to hit a quota by the end of the day.
Precisely. And when we apply the third dimension helping the speaker, the dynamic shifts even further.
How so?
When you use active listening techniques to make the other party feel deeply heard and legitimately understood, their neurological defense mechanisms drop.
Oh, wow. So they move from an adversarial posture to a collaborative one.
Yes. In sales, clients do not buy your product because they finally understand your pitch. They buy because they finally feel that you understand their problem.
That is huge.
And you cannot demonstrate that understanding unless you've mastered the discipline, silence, and active capturing required by this framework.
That transforms our entire concept of influence. We assume influence is about projecting our voice outward with enough force to change someone's mind.
Right, pushing your ideas onto them.
But true influence is actually about creating a vacuum. It's about creating a space so secure and attentive that it pulls the other person's truth out into the open, where you can actually work with it.
It's a radical shift in perspective, which is exactly why organizations try to deploy this training across every department, from the sales floor to the C-suite.
But that brings up a massive logistical hurdle. For the listener currently thinking, my entire management team desperately needs to learn how to create that vacuum, how is this program actually deployed in the real world?
Yeah, rolling out soft skills training is tough.
It's notoriously difficult, especially when it challenges people's egos. People have a tendency to nod along in the conference room and then instantly revert to their old communication habits the second they check their email.
Oh, totally. But the creators of the program have structured the buying and delivery options to specifically combat that corporate amnesia. They lean really heavily into the psychology of adult learning and habit formation.
Let's look at the assessments themselves. There are two pathways, print or online.
Right.
The print version utilizes physical 5-packs. They feature an updated color interior and rely on pressure-sensitive forms for manual scoring. From a purely logistical standpoint, this is perfect for an offsite retreat or a manufacturing environment where you just don't want people distracted by their laptops.
But there's also a profound psychological weight to the print version. We discussed the ego-breaking nature of the assessment earlier.
Yeah, that brutal hour.
There is something intensely grounding about physically pressing a pen into paper to grade your own flaws. The manual tabulation of the score forces the participant to sit with the data longer than they would if a computer simply flashed a number on a screen.
It forces tactile engagement with your own shortcomings.
Exactly.
But, for distributed teams or facilitators who need immediate aggregated data, the online assessment runs through the HRDQ Assessment Center. It handles all the administration, generates personalized reporting with full-color charts for the user, and automatically routes the electronic reports to the trainer.
And the trainer is given a massive amount of structural support. The Print Facilitator Guide removes the terrifying guesswork of standing in front of a room of skeptical adults.
Thank goodness for that.
It provides the background information, step-by-step scripts, discussion questions engineered to provoke debate, activities, and digital links for all the presentation assets.
They also provide environmental anchors to keep the concepts alive after the workshop ends, right?
Yes, there are print workbook 5-packs so participants leave with concrete, on-the-job tools. There's an illustrated poster depicting the dimensions of learning to hang in the break room.
I love that. And they even utilize HRDQ card 5-packs, which are these quick physical reminder cards of the key takeaways. It's really an ecosystem designed to trigger the new habit of active listening in the wild long after the facilitator has packed up.
But perhaps the most crucial element for the success of the rollout is how they prepare that facilitator in the first place.
Yes. The Quick Start Train the Trainer, or a QST option. I have to say, this is easily the most brilliant logistical component of the entire package.
It really is a game changer.
It provides a 1-hour, one-on-one virtual coaching session with a subject matter expert. You can add extra hours if needed, and it yields an HRDQ certificate of completion.
The underlying brilliance of the QST is that it directly addresses the fear of the person tasked with teaching the material.
Because standing in front of your own peers to teach them about active listening is incredibly intimidating.
It's terrifying.
Every single person in that room is going to be hyper-analyzing your listening skills the entire time. Every time someone asks a question, the room is silently judging whether you are capturing the message or just waiting to speak.
Exactly. So by giving the facilitator their own personal expert beforehand, you remove the terror of the blind spot. You ensure the teacher actually embodies the 3 dimensions before they attempt to demand them of others.
You're creating a secure environment for the trainer so they can then create a secure environment for the team. It's the framework modeling itself.
Spot on.
Well, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, dismantling a skill most people just take for granted. We started by confronting the daily illusion that hearing words is the same as actually listening to them.
Right, and we explored how the physical and cognitive exhaustion of true listening is usually what defeats us.
Then we examined the learning to listen framework, moving past the invisible barriers by adopting the 3 active dimensions. Harnessing our processing speed to stay focused, avoiding our own biases to accurately capture the message, and providing the visible and invisible cues necessary to actively help the speaker.
We confronted the uncomfortable reality of the self-assessment too, and why taking an hour to sit in the cognitive dissonance of your own bad habits is really the only way to break the Dunning-Kruger effect.
And finally, we saw how implementing these mechanics completely rewires professional outcomes. It doesn't just make you a more pleasant colleague, it turns customer frustration into clarity, it elevates performance coaching, and it provides the ultimate leverage in sales and negotiation by proving that professionals listen while amateurs talk.
It really is the ultimate invisible advantage.
It is. So to wrap this up, the next time someone comes to you with a problem, a client on the verge of walking away, an employee struggling with their workload, or even just a friend venting over coffee, check your mental radar screen.
Check those dimensions.
Ask yourself, Are you just passively capturing their message through your own bias filter, or are you actively helping them speak? What if the key to being a truly great communicator isn't finding the exact right words to say, but creating the exact right space for someone else to find theirs?